Welcome to today's blog post. Today we're going to be talking about scanning ahead and making rapid progress from phonics to reading comprehension. Here's a question for you first. Why would you want a reading program that doesn't use words? Well, here's a hint. It's because it teaches the children to scan ahead in their reading, and this translates into improved fluency and comprehension. In the summer of 2024, at the end of Year 6, thousands of children took an assessment which showed their attainment in reading at the end of their time at primary school. Almost 3/4 of them, 74%, reached the expected standard. And of course, this means that around 1/4 of all the children who started secondary school in September 2024 did not have the level of reading that they would need to keep up with the class and the curriculum. So in this post today, I want to look at the single factor that teachers speak about when we talk about the difference between learning to read and reading to learn. Learning to read is hard for children when they haven't grown up with books and when English is an additional language, or when they perhaps haven't really engaged enough with spoken language of any kind. Schools can help children to catch up with other pupils by boosting their vocabulary and supporting their speech development and providing them with books and, of course, a structured phonics program. Reading to learn, on the other hand, involves reading with automatic word recognition and with reading fluency and a deeper level of engagement with the text. So a child who is able to read to learn is the child who can learn new things and enjoy the complexity of a mystery novel or a whodunit that involves deeper levels of engagement and also building theories about what really might have happened in the plot. Teachers say that being able to scan ahead is the key thing that children learn to do when they become fluent readers. The children who cannot scan ahead in their reading simply do not become fluent. There's this very clear distinction. So, how do children progress from learning to read to reading to learn? If teachers knew exactly how to support this transition, the Year 6 results would look very different indeed. Right now, we've just reached the end of term and Rhythm for Reading results are in. And the teachers are saying that the children are scanning ahead while they read. So the children who were learning to read from phonics books and were not scanning ahead at the start of January are now reading chapter books and are scanning ahead in their reading 10 weeks later. Their teacher has told me that all of the children who were in the Rhythm for Reading program are now able to scan ahead and have moved from phonics books to reading chapter books. Their reading comprehension scores have soared, and she described their progress in reading as beyond her expectations. So the children have taken part in rhythm-based exercises in 10 weekly sessions of 10 minutes. Rather than reading words, they've been reading simple musical notes. And in these sessions, the children were learning to read the notes as rhythmic patterns, and they were anticipating what was coming up next in every musical phrase. Actually, they were having so much fun reading in time with the background audio tracks and doing the actions that they didn't even notice how much they were learning. Some of the children told me that they loved the hand actions, especially the ones that involved making swishing sounds. Others loved the ideas and the stories behind the music. For example, we have a story about a dinosaur footprint that turns up in the local high street, and all the children also enjoy the music that portrays dolphins that dance, especially as there's an exuberant splash at key moments. In the music, there are rhythmic patterns that lock the children into rhythmic precision while they read, and this really helps them to trust that the process of reading is something that can feel fun, but can also feel comfortable and rewarding. So let's just think a little bit more about scanning ahead. To my mind, scanning ahead and scanning the page both support reading comprehension, but these are completely different skills. Scanning the page involves finding a key word and skipping to the key point in the text. And this is very much a matter of choice, and it involves choosing the right strategy to answer a comprehension question, for example. But when children are scanning ahead while they read aloud, they read with fluency, and this is not so much a matter of choice because it happens automatically. So this means that as a skill, it is pretty elusive, and this is why scanning ahead, important as it is actually quite difficult to teach. Scanning, on the other hand, is a speed reading technique that's used mainly by adults. It involves casting your eyes down the centre of the page to pick up the gist of the meaning. The value of this lies in covering a large amount of text at speed, but research studies have actually concluded that this technique does not result in better understanding. Scanning ahead is a skill that develops over time and happens at a subconscious level. It's not a reading strategy that we can develop at will. I found myself wondering why we would develop the skill to scan ahead as we read. So perhaps the art of storytelling, with drama, suspense, mystery and cliffhangers woven together, somehow persuade children to scan ahead as they read. Or maybe the mind scans the environment all of the time for real-life drama and only sometimes co-opts this skill for reading if we're willing to suspend our grip on reality. So does the child need to feel safer before they can scan ahead while they read? And I also wondered whether the human visual processing network needs to see the words not so much as marks on the page, but as messengers that carry meaning before scanning ahead can really begin. So what are the challenges that may prevent children from scanning ahead? First of all, we could think about eye movement control. The development of eye movement control is not something that teachers would explicitly teach. However, eye movement control is linked to the development of fluency by reading specialists such as Marianne Wolf, who's the author of the amazing book Proust and the Squid. And this is what she says. One brilliant design feature of our eyes allows us to see ahead into a parafoveal region and still farther along the line of text into the peripheral region. Because we also use foveal and parafoveal information, we always have a preview of what lies ahead. And the preview then becomes, milliseconds later, easier to recognize, contributing further to our automaticity. Now, I've been reading about this, and researchers are not clear whether parafoveal information attracts attention towards the information because it's interesting, or whether it's a matter of filtering out the highly familiar words that do not really satisfy the need to know what's coming up next in the text. And actually, this is fascinating to me. The parafoveal region of visual processing only develops when the foveal region is freed up, and the reading is thus not fixated on a particular word. This can make absolute sense in a more natural scenario. So imagine that the very first form of reading, which perhaps might have been following a trail in the woods, involves tracking an animal, but progress might stop really suddenly because there's a change in the clues on the ground. There would be a moment of fixation on the animal track and some close analysis, followed by a decision, and then progress along the trail in the wood could resume. I think there's an important balance to be struck between reading a piece of continuous text and reading something such as a single word in isolation. Marie Clay, who is the founder of Reading Recovery and the author of Literacy Lessons, reminds us that some children struggle to remember the shape of a letter, And if a teacher focuses too much on that level of detail, then the child can lose out on the momentum that they really need at the early stage of learning to read. Now, one of the advantages of rhythm for reading is that the detail of letter shapes and words is irrelevant as we are using musical notes. And also, there's no need for the children to fixate or analyse what they are reading using those foveal fixations, because the resources of the programme allow them to read fluently straight away. Obviously, learning to scan ahead is so very important. And of course, for the thousands of children who do not make the transition from the word level of reading to the fluent level, there is a real impact on self-esteem. So Jamie Oliver, when he was talking about becoming a best-selling author on the Made by Dyslexia YouTube channel, said this. He said, "As a dyslexic kid at school, words and writing were my enemy." And that made me think about that idea of fixating on individual little pieces of the text with the foveal eye processing, never really getting beyond that. And Sir Richard Branson, in his letter to his younger self, Dear Ricky, he said, "You might not realise it, but there are many, many other people out there that struggle at school in similar ways to you. And many of them have gone on to invent or create wonderful things." And I really love that because, it's about putting things in perspective, seeing the bigger picture. It's not just about following the track in the woods, is it? There's so much more to life. So all of this is absolutely true. But of course, unlike these amazing inspirational public figures, there are many, many people who have not been fortunate enough to fully realise their own potential. I was in a similar situation at the age of 9. At that point, reading was really just a code-breaking exercise for me. I was quite good at it. I could read the words out loud, but beyond just identifying what each word was, reading really felt pointless. And I could see that my friends were enjoying their reading and they were getting so much more out of it than I did. My reading actually transformed when I learnt to read music and to play music with other children in a musical group. And at that point, when this sudden immediate surge in progress happened, I knew that one day I wanted to help other children to unlock their reading too. So, by way of a conclusion, let's just have a look at what I've been discussing here. Many people have tried to pinpoint the exact overlap between reading language and musical rhythm. I'm one of those people, and I can tell you that it is pretty elusive. Dean Pionomano, the author of Your Brain is a Time Machine, points to the topic of scanning ahead as he says this: "Speech and music are active endeavours that require the brain to create a running expectation of what can happen next." And yes, we can say that being able to anticipate a particular word or group of words at a particular point in time sets up the desire to scan ahead in fluent reading. To satisfy this level of expectation and the depth of engagement that follows is honestly one of the most powerful forms of intrinsic motivation for reading further and further into the text. And because I wanted to help teachers to help children who may have had a similar experience to me, I developed the Rhythm for Reading program. Reading simple musical notation in time with a beat is the main ingredient, yes. But I've also created a system that builds the children's motivation to anticipate what's coming up next in the text when they then go on to read books. And this is not only about scanning ahead, but it's also about making the transition to reading fluency pure fun. And of course, it can transform children's educational experiences and give them that opportunity to learn and to engage with the curriculum going forwards.